Good morning. Last week I talked about how I'm finishing a book called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Fantastic book. I highly recommend it. And I also talked about how in the last chapter, he talks about 4 ways to renew ourselves. We need renewal in our lives. If we're not getting the rest we need, if we're not filling ourselves up, then we have nothing to give to others. And really, very little value to give to the planet in any way, shape, or form. We can't give as much to our work. We can't give as much to our kids. We can't give as much to the people around us, the people that we care about. So here's what I want to talk about. Last week I covered physical renewal. We talked about diet, sleep, exercise, and drinking water a little bit, for really focusing on sleep. We also talked about, or I can't say we didn't talk about it, right? I also talked about mental and emotional renewal, and how we need to practice learning. We need to work our brains in unique ways. Today, what I'd like to cover is spiritual renewal and relationship renewal. And again, maybe I'll hopefully shed some light on things that people don't typically think about these things. For spiritual renewal, I'm going to start there because it's a topic that's a little bit weird for a lot of people to talk about spirituality. I think people are often thrown off with spirituality. Often we think of spirituality as religion. Although this is changing in our society and our culture a little bit. When I think about spirituality, I think spirituality is made up of a few ingredients. It is made up of our values. It's made up of our purpose. It's also made up of how we make sense of the world. How we make sense of the world. Let me explain all of those. Our values are the things that we believe need to be part of our lives. So values can be integrity, character, those kinds of things. Values could also be leave the planet better off than when we came, or something like that. Values can be honesty or trust or whatever it is, connection with others or connection with nature. That's values, and it's a good exercise to take time and think about your values. What do you value in this life? What do you value in your own life? And what do you value on this planet? Secondly, is what is our purpose? So why are we here? Why am I here? What is life all about? What am I here to do? Now you might say, oh, well, I've been placed on this by an omnipotent being. Maybe you believe that you're in the mix of life in a different way, and that it's not connected to a deity, but that you've got a different purpose. Maybe it's to again leave the world off better than when you came, to make it a little bit better. Maybe it's to simply grow and experience as much as you can, like a plant. A plant takes up, in many ways, plants, we've got weird ideas about plants or about animals. We think that the animal kingdom is really kind to each other. And watch animals, they're not kind to each other, right? Or we look at plants and we think that plants are these beautiful things that work in harmony with everything else. And in some ways that's true, but plants take up as many nutrients as they can. They make themselves as big as possible. They grow as much as possible. Not for the benefit of others. It's so that they survive. And so sometimes we've got these weird ideas about nature, but some people with their spirituality go, wait a second, no, I want to be different in this natural balance. So that's our purpose. What is your purpose? What are you here for? What do you want to leave the world with? And the third is, how do we make sense of the world? When something happens that is maybe really traumatic, when maybe somebody in your life passes away, maybe somebody in your life experiences some trauma, maybe you've experienced some trauma, how do you make sense of the things that are really difficult in life? How do you make sense of the great things that happen to other people or to yourself? The way you understand these things, the story that we tell ourselves, is part of our spirituality. Now, with religions, typically we have, I don't want to demean religions in any way, often, because there are so many purposes to these, but religions often have things kind of wrapped up in a box. Like this is your purpose, these are your values, this is how you make sense of the world. Other spiritual practices or ideas are going to be very open and very individualistic. And again, there are advantages and disadvantages of both, or anything in between. But to explore your spirituality is a worthwhile exercise. Here's what I challenge you to do. Here's an experiment that I want you to run. I want you to start asking yourself, what are my values? What do I value? What is my purpose? And thirdly, how do I make sense of the world? When something happens that I don't like, How do I explain that? And this is not to give you something that you can take and take a lot of action on. It's to explore it. Spiritual renewal often is about connecting with our values, connecting with our purpose, connecting with how we make sense of the world, understanding it better, contemplating it. Those are great spiritual practices. And I take time on a consistent basis, on a daily basis. I try to do it on a daily basis to connect with what I believe about this world in those three areas. So that's spirituality. The second area is relationships. Now listen, again, everyone and their dog talks about relationships. Everyone claims to be an expert on relationships, and that's not what I'm going to claim to do here today. What I want you to do is, I'll give you an analogy of something that I think about with relationships a lot, and then secondly, a practice that I challenge you to try out a little bit. So the first is an analogy. The way I think about relationships and in healthy living is that we need three groups of people around us constantly. We need people that are beyond us in certain ways. That can be in relationships or in business or with physical health, whatever that is. And we need those people to look up to and have an investment into us. Maybe we can't give as much to them, but they invest a lot in us. We need a group of people that are compatriots, people that understand where we're at. We understand where they're at because we're in a similar situation. And then we also need people that we can invest in and probably give a lot more value than they can give us. I'll give you an example. Let's use business. So in business, what it would look like is I've got mentors, which I do. And then I've got a bunch of people that I mastermind with and think through ideas with, and we're kind of on the same level in business. And then I've got a lot of people that I invest in as well. Or maybe you think about it with parents. So maybe you've got some people that have lived life and done a really good job of parenting, and they invest in us. And we listen to them and grow from their stories. And then we've got people that are parents with the same age of kids as us, and we kind of struggle through life together, and we share some of those struggles. And then we've also got people that we can encourage. Maybe you've got a 10-year-old and somebody else has a 4-year-old, and you go, hey, I get it. That was a hard age in these ways, and it was delightful in these ways. And it's okay to mourn that you've got less time and energy than you did before you had kids. So we need those three levels. Here's the analogy. I see us as water in many ways, and you can liken healthy bodies of water to humans and relationships. If we think about a body of water, if we do not have inflow, I've talked about this before, if we do not have fresh water coming into us, if we're a lake, we do not have fresh water coming in, then what happens? We dry up. And if we don't have others investing us, we dry up as well in relationships. In the same way, or a similar way, if we don't provide, if a lake doesn't drain, then it actually becomes really, really, really dense with nutrients, so dense that it actually kills off all life. So the Dead Sea is a really good example. It's below sea level, and it's so concentrated with mineral deposits that it kills all life. And that's a really good thing to think about. To say, well, wait a second, am I healthy? Am I able to sustain life around me in relationships? Am I growing by having people that give to me? And am I growing by giving to others? That's the way I kind of see that with relationships. The challenge that I'd give for everyone, and this is to myself as well, is we can all become better at communicating constantly. Again, it's a word that's overused, right? Another word that's often, or a term that's often used is active listening. And here's what I'd encourage you to do. This is a practice that is phenomenal. I want you to practice asking better questions, asking questions that go deeper with people. Instead of asking a simple question and then giving somebody a lot of advice, which is awful. Nobody enjoys being on the end of that. And usually the advice is not very helpful because somebody has not listened to us. Instead, what I want you to do is ask better questions of somebody. Ask, hey, what is that about? Help me understand what you were thinking at that time. Help me understand what you were feeling at that time. Help me understand what you're going to do about that. What are your thoughts? Let somebody else explain their situation. When we get better at that, we become better listeners, we become better communicators, but also we're able to help people out more. It's like the sales process. I think of influence and sales as the same thing. If I want to influence somebody, if I want to help somebody, I need to listen to them. If somebody comes to me and says, I really need a toothbrush, but I'm trying to sell them, I don't know, a bar of soap, that's not helpful. That's not helpful. Maybe a bar of soap is helpful for a lot of people, but for them, maybe they've got a lot of soap at home. What they're asking for is something else. If I don't ask some questions, hey, where's your problem? And they say, I'm dirty, but it's my teeth. My teeth are dirty. It's not my face, it's my teeth. If we're not listening to somebody, we're gonna prescribe wrong. And we've all been at the other end of this, where we've talked to a doctor or a mechanic or a parent or a friend and gotten terrible advice, not because the person is terrible, not because they don't want to help us, because they haven't really listened to our problem. So that's the last thing I'll leave you with this week is practice listening, practice asking questions, practice understanding people. It all comes back down to curiosity. The more curious you are about somebody else, the more you will learn about them, and the more they will be helped by you, the more influence you will have on the world, which, by the way, is part of my spirituality. Part of my spirituality is connection and helping. And in order to do that, we need to listen to others. Enjoy your week.